It all started with a dream. It was fall. At least, I think it was. And I was walking through a cemetery. A cemetery I was sure I had never visited before. At least, it didn't look familiar. I was looking at a tombstone reading, "In loving memory, Ernie Clausen." Ernie Clausen. There were some dates below the above legend, but I couldn't make them out. I had never heard of Ernie Clausen and didn't know who he was. But for some reason, his name stayed with me after I woke up in confusion. I might have eventually forgotten all about it, except I saw the name again on the obituaries page. I was stuck in an old-fashioned barber shop and waiting for my turn in the chair, and to pass the time, I picked up a copy of the local rag, which was sitting there with the other old magazines. It was turned to the obituaries page, and as I picked it up, I saw a face I knew, that of a kindly old man who worked at one of the local gas stations. And then I saw the name, Ernie Clausen. Ernie Clausen. It appeared Ernie had passed away a few days earlier, and I'd had the dream the night before he died. Still, he was an old man, so I put it down to coincidence. And hey, I hardly knew the guy. But I knew the name on the next headstone. I dreamed I was back in the previous cemetery, and I understood it was early fall. I was standing before another tombstone, and this one read, Lorna Russell. Lorna Russell. Lorna Russell was a lady I worked with for around 3 years, early in my career. I liked the woman, I think, but I had moved on to another employer and forgotten all about her. I hoped her name was on the tombstone in error, but again, I would have forgotten all about it if I hadn't run into Kathy, who had also worked in that office, and she brought me up to speed. She insisted on bringing me up to speed, whether I was interested or not. Lorna passed away last week. You worked with her, eh? She had cancer. Well, that gave me pause. 2 people I slightly knew had died. But before they did, I dreamt I saw their gravestones. Still, I just chalked it up to experience. I mean, if I was going to foresee the future, surely I should be able to foresee something of greater consequence, at least for me, than the death of 2 obscure acquaintances. The next day, I had trouble at work with one of the IT guys. Jeff was supposed to have run some reports for me, and I had reminded him only a few days before, but when I went to access them, they weren't there. I was in hot water with the boss, and when I confronted Jeff, he denied I had ever requested the reports. And since all our negotiations were verbal, I had no proof he was lying. Eventually, we had a meeting in the boss's office. Jeff's boss backed him up, but mine hung me out to dry. And the whole time, Jeff sat across from me with an arrogant smirk. Prick! After I got home that night, I proceeded to get plastered. I live alone, as I'm divorced. I don't remember falling into bed, but I remember my dream. Once again, I found myself in the same cemetery. It was still fall, but the season seemed to have advanced. The trees were turning color, and many had lost their leaves. And the monument in front of me read, Jeff Tovarich. Jeff Tovarich. My heart filled with joy at the prospect of never having to see that sneering face again. And then I woke up. Too good to be true, I told myself before turning over and going back to sleep. I arrived at work the next day with a heavy head and, much as I hate to admit it, a heavy heart. But at least those wretched reports would finally be done. They weren't. I was just about to go to the boss's office to complain when she appeared in my doorway, white-faced. Did you hear about Jeff? What about Jeff? I said, sharper than I had intended. He's dead. Apparently Jeff had been killed by a hit-and-run driver while walking to work that morning. And no, it wasn't me. I take the bus to work. I was stunned by the news, not from any great love of Jeff, but had I foretold his death in my dream? Well, of course, during the course of the day, I began to wonder, did I do it? Had I killed him? Impossible. It was just a dream, that's all. I seemed to be able to see the future, but kill someone? Again, impossible. Still, I couldn't help thinking. When I got home from work, I found a letter from my ex-wife's lawyer waiting for me. I was a little behind with my alimony payments, and they were making the usual threats to garnishing my wages, as if I wasn't on enough thin ice with my current boss. Carla was bleeding me white, but it's not like she needed the money. She was living with Neil, who, I figured, she had an affair with before she left me. I wish she'd drop dead. Drop dead. Would it be possible? No. Still, I poured myself a double, and then another, a double-double, and by the time I was ready to collapse on the bed, I had worked myself into a rage over that blood-sucking witch. I dreamed I was back in the graveyard. It was later in the season, and the trees were mostly bare. It was darker and colder, too, like it was late October. I was standing and looking down at a tombstone, and it had the bitch, my ex-wife's name on it. It also said, beloved wife of, followed by my name. I nearly doubled over with hysterical whooping laughter, which is when I saw him. Saw it. The Grim Reaper, skull-faced, with his hood and traditional black robe, stood about 20 feet away, regarding me. Of course, it was impossible to read its expression, and to tell if I was being regarded with humor or with hostility. Then I woke up. On my morning bus, I was scrolling through the local news on my phone when I learned about Carla's murder. It was an apparent home invasion that went wrong. Neil was badly beaten up, but one of the thugs fractured Carla's skull, and she died while I was dreaming. I felt elation, no more alimony, which was quickly followed by abject and humiliating remorse for about 2 or 3 minutes. Smarten up, I told myself. You didn't kill her. And you'd better get your act together, as you're going to have the cops to deal with. They came to the office around 4 and interviewed me in our small meeting room. Once again, the boss wasn't too pleased, but there was damn all she could do about it. The cops seemed very suspicious of me. What did they think? I was one of the home invaders? You don't seem too upset about it, one of the cops observed. I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have kept my big mouth shut. But I couldn't resist saying, not really. Her death relieves me of a financial burden. Stupid. Stupid, I know. But I wasn't guilty of anything. Sure, I wished her dead, but that's not murder. Still, I was going to have to watch myself. I went to bed early that night, sober, and found myself back in the graveyard. It was darker and colder. Winter had arrived. Winter had arrived. I stood before a grave and read. My name. My name! My name! I looked up to see the Grim Reaper. It was closer this time, and even though its face was a bone-white skull, I could tell it was grinning. I woke up. Something woke me up. There were people moving around in the apartment, moving around in the living room, moving around in the middle of the night. They pushed into the bedroom, 3 of them, all in black, with black balaclavas over their heads, and long, sharp knives in their hands, and behind them, in the doorway, loomed the Grim Reaper. The intruder nearest the bed raised his knife and brought it down with a grating sound. The tip must have hit a rib and as I lost consciousness, I couldn't help thinking, who says dreams never come true? If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring cryptids such as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. Help me to realize my dream of 2,021 subs by 2021. Till midnight. Cheers.